Okay, stuff of mine began in a different place than it's at now. I started thinking of myself as a writer, and I wanted to do a particular kind of poem. This was in like mid '60s, but especially say from '67 to '69. I wanted to do poems that could be obviously made up of words, but my goal was I wanted readers not to have any kind of specialized knowledge, that all they had to do was look carefully at a line of a poem. So this, for example, the poem is called because most of the words are here and there. So I took the RE from it. Each line is three parentheses. So ideally, I would have wanted, but I doubt if any reader did this. Ideally, I wanted the reader to read some of those lines silently. The goal that I had was I wanted things to be as literal as possible. A poem that begins with a period and then it plays on the word for period. I have made my point. I make it again. Now you get the point. Or a poem that starts with a line that says "let it go." Then I go to the dictionary and copy down every word until I get to the bottom of the page. So after writing for a while, maybe I should go back further. I never went to an art school. Never went to an architecture school. Always went to a creative writing school. After doing stuff like this for a while, I went to the University of Iowa, which at that time in the early '60s was one of I think one of only two creative writing schools in the United States. I didn't want to particularly go to a creative writing school, but I had the scholarship that meant that I could exist for 2 or 3 years without worrying about money. After writing things like this, I started to think the basis of what I called poems of mine. The basis was some kind of motion. You know, you start at one part of the alphabet. You follow that until you get to the end of the page. But I started to think that I want to be what I was making my lines of the poem do. I wanted to be involved in some kind of activity. So by 1968, I started doing a lot of stuff in the street. This was a piece called Following Piece. Each day I would pick out at random a person in the street, a person walking. Each day then I would follow a person until that person entered a private place, home, office, whatever. So that following episodes could range from, say, 2 or 3 minute episodes when someone might get into a taxi and I couldn't follow, ranging from that to 7 or 8 hour episodes when someone might go to a restaurant, a movie, Actually, I always wondered if this person who did go to a movie was giving me a message, because the movie he went to was a movie at the at one time it was a movie theater called the Academy of Music on 14th Street, and the person who went into this movie, and I too then went into the movie, but I never made myself necessarily known. But the movie that was playing was after the American actress Carol Baker kind of went through her career. She started making movies in Italy, and the movie she went to see was called Paranoia. So I wondered, is she giving me some kind of message? Okay, after doing pieces for, I don't know. I mean, at this time, pieces were changing fast. So I began with trying to find the street. I mean, I was born in New York. After doing pieces like this for a while, maybe 5 months, 8 months, I decided that I'm too much like a kind of voyeur. I'm making myself find ways to go through the streets of New York. But I thought I have to start to concentrate on myself more. I have to start turning in on myself, which started to happen in maybe 69, maybe 69 or 70. This was a film piece. The film begins in darkness. The piece is called Conversions. The film begins in darkness. There's a candle lighting, making the image possible. As I move the candle in front of my body, I draw the candle near to my chest. The camera zooms in then, and the rest of the film is spent in me using the candle, the light source for the film, using the candle to burn the hair off each breast. Once the hair is removed, I'm pulling at each breast in a very futile version, in a very futile attempt to develop a woman's breast. And I started to realize that it's not so much that I wanted. I mean, I could never turn myself into a woman, but I could make the decision to make that effort, make that will towards being something I wasn't. Okay. After doing pieces with myself maybe and another person, I started to realize that what these pieces should lead up to is I should make an attempt towards you. So in 1971, in a kind of basement space. It was the Avalanche magazine offices. It was a basement space. I wanted to do something that was based on trying to hypnotize myself. So I'm at the foot of the stairs in the basement. I'm constantly talking. Well, I should mention reasons for this. The reason I was blindfolded was that I realized that if I wasn't blindfolded, I'm going to see people, persons. I always like to think of, rather than people, persons. Persons recognizes the individuality of people. So I needed to have a blindfold because I obviously couldn't do this if I saw, for example, David Ross come down, unless I was very angry at him, and then, then, okay. So it was a 3-hour piece, and it was based on my reading about self-hypnotism. And most of the people I read, most of the writing I read said that you probably can't do it after an hour. Somewhere in the second hour, you very possibly can hypnotize yourself. So the things I was saying very constantly were, I'm alone here in the basement. I want to stay alone here in the basement. I don't want anybody to coming down. I don't want anybody to come down in the basement with me. I'll stop anybody from coming down in the basement with me. I'm alone here in the basement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it did kind of work. Somewhere in the second hour, I realized things like I'm saying things I didn't plan to say. I'm saying things like, I'll kill you, I'll kill you, I'll kill you. But I didn't realize that till later.
And you had this lead pipe.
Oh yes, I forgot. I left out the most important part of the piece. I mean, I was only the agent who used the lead pipe, So I had 2 lead pipes and a crowbar. But a lot of interesting things happen. People realize. I heard people say, "We're going to get him," "We're going to get him," and then saying, "Jesus Christ, he's serious," But at one point, somebody realized that somebody in the quote audience. Somebody realized that the handrail was very loose. So they would shake the handrail. And as soon as I heard that, I kept banging the floor, hoping I would hit now and then a person. But I don't think I could have done that because I probably would be in prison now. Okay. Well, and anyway, the kind of reading I did about self-hypnotism was most people thought that you could do it. By the end of the 3rd hour, it would start to dissipate. So that's why I did it for 3 hours. But of course, I needed to know how was I going to know when it was three hours. So I thought at first I would ask somebody to tell me, but I thought if this piece worked, I probably wouldn't trust anybody. So instead, I put a little alarm clock down in the basement, and as soon as the alarm clock went off after 3 hours, if there was a self-hypnotism, it was totally stopped. So pieces like that started to mean something. I should have shown more pictures. Yeah, of course.
About the type of photographs that we're seeing in documentation.
Yeah.
Extremely high contrast. Did you what?
Well, I was using a very cheap camera then, a Kodak Instamatic. Though Kodak Instamatics tended to do grayish pieces rather than rather than sharp contrast. I had the person who filmed this piece was a person who later I did a long video called the red tapes, and he was the photographer. Yeah, yeah. But I think you had a you were.
I've seen these images, shown them many times.
Yeah.
And this is the first time I've gotten to hear you talk about them.
Yeah.
You know, I see these images and I project so much into them. And they are, for better or for worse, the experience that many people have with this work at this point. You know, it
Yeah.
caption a fragment of the story.
Yeah.
But the images have a lot of aesthetic specificity to them.
It was videotaped also, but from a 3-hour video, I think we cut things and made it something like a 45-minute video. But the video was much grayer. Well, at that time, you know, video wasn't as high contrast. What? Yeah. 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 But now that you ask a question like that, you know, I didn't have a question about videotaping it, maybe because I wanted something to remain, and I thought what I wanted to remain had to be something in motion. Yeah. So I thought still photos weren't enough. Yeah. But did you want to ask a further question, or?
You know, we have
Yeah.
students, when they experiment with performance, often have the impulse not to document. There's a sense that documentation is an impure compromise. I'm wondering if you felt
I think that's happened more now. Then I think everybody I knew that were doing. I mean, there weren't that many people, but at the same time, there was starting to be a kind of growing group of people, not necessarily in the same place. You know, there was Terry Fox in San Francisco. There was Chris Burden in L.A. There were people in Europe. So very quickly we started to think there's obviously something in the air, you know. And I think what was in the air was, you know, this was 1971. So the fact that wow, you know, without a real kind of instrument of reportage, this stuff started to become known. But it probably was known only to those of us who were doing that thing. Oops, sorry. I knew that was going to happen. Yeah,
Did
please.
you say that because it was new, you were more eager or interested
Well,
in
what-
documenting
It
as opposed
wasn't.
to
It
people
wasn't
now?
because it was new. It was because I think people in my generation, you know, didn't necessarily want to do pop art. Didn't necessarily want to do. Didn't. Is something not being heard? Or?
No, that's fine, that's working for the recording.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But should I be talking louder?
That's fine.
Yeah. I think some of us thought that we're in the middle of something, and maybe we're even starting something that that might continue. You know, it might continue, and it might continue because it's wrapped up with the agent himself or herself. Yeah. It's so dependent. It's so dependent on an agent, which is probably the reason why most of the people, most of the persons who are doing this kind of work Probably only did it for 3 years, because if I'm using myself in a piece, how different can I make myself? You know, and so I started to think. I remember maybe in 1973, 74. I started to do a lot of pieces in Europe. But I realized that the way I had to do them is there had to be some kind of translation for an Italian audience, translation for a French audience, and I started to try to build that into the piece. But I think that's what stopped me. That's what started to make me stop doing live pieces, because I kept thinking that I've given myself some kind of text to follow, so it's not real anymore. You know, I mean, some of it was still on the spot, but I think it was a sign to me that I have to do something else. This wasn't the something else, but was probably the end of what I and other people tried to start. It's a piece called Seedbed in 1972, and this coincidental. It wasn't coincidental, but this was the time when galleries were starting to move. Galleries used to be on East 57th Street. They used to be on Madison Avenue, but starting at the end of 1971, Leo Castelli started a gallery in Soho. Ileana Sondervan started a gallery in Soho, and at that time there was like one building, you know, called 420 West Broadway, you know, but it spread, you know.
Like a virus.
What? Like a virus? Was it like a virus though? I don't know.
More like a plague.
What? Yeah. But there were different kinds of performances, you know. The kinds of stuff I was doing was possibly had some similarities to what Chris was doing, but probably had very few similarities to what Gilbert and George was doing. You know, Gilbert and George was like, it seemed like this had to happen. There had to be a British version to counter the Americans. You know, we could do stuff and like fuck it up, but the English did it on the stand. You know, yeah. Okay. This piece was in 1972, not just a few months after the piece called Claim. I wanted to be in different places at once. Of course, I didn't quite know how to do that, but the way I resorted to was halfway across a room of Sondervan Gallery, and the room was around 45 feet long, 25 feet wide. Halfway across the room, I would have built a ramp that started at the floor, and then rose to a height of about 2.5, 3 feet at the far wall. So as people came into the gallery, they probably without thinking about it too much, started to walk up the ramp or along the ramp. The piece was done for a number of days, and each time it would start at 10 o'clock in the morning, the time galleries opened, and would stop at 6 o'clock at night. I'm underneath the ramp, moving around under this place where again, this is it was no more than 3 feet, and of course got lower. My attempt was to constantly masturbate, and in order to do so, to use the passersby, to use the viewers as help in the sense that I hear people's footsteps on top of me. I try to make sexual fantasies on those footsteps. So I'm constantly saying things like, I'm doing this with the person to my left. I'm touching your hair. I'm running my hand down your ass, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There were a lot of mistakes in this project, but somehow since it was only there for 2 weeks, probably maybe people forgot the mistakes. I don't think they did, because I constantly reminded them. When I realized that my voice had to be heard, the people in the gallery very quickly put a kind of speaker system, and that really spoiled the project, because as I'm talking, I'm on the floor, I'm moving from place to place, but my voice only comes out of one spot. So, not that I would ever want to do this project again, but if I had a kind of son or daughter, maybe I would teach that person.
Marina Bromley appropriated and did it at the Guggenheim.
Yeah.
She did it kind of differently.
Yeah, but I think she set out to do it.
Yeah.
To do it differently.
Very
I think these were her versions. What? Say again? Well, yeah, it would be a different kind of action.
So that thing in the corner is a speaker?
Yeah.
Yes. Even the speakers in those days were bigger than they are now. It could have been hidden more, but I never even thought of that. Okay, after Seedbed, and after I realized, wow, I'm not seeing. The way I should say something about the way this piece went on. I made a point of going under the floor before the first visitors to the gallery came to the gallery. So I probably started it maybe 10-15 minutes before and ended it 15 minutes later, because I didn't want persons to see, first of all, to see me as a person, whereas for the time I'm under, I'm there as a kind of interactant. I'm trying to make some kind of relation with people that I had no idea who they were, and no idea if they were men, women, etc. Okay, but well, at the rate I'm going, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you know, I can probably talk.
I know 3 hours is the norm. But
Yeah.
yeah, wonderful. I wish we had that much time.
What?
I wish we had 3 hours.
Okay, so once I did Seedbed, I thought, now that I've made myself not seen, I started to think, do I have to be there at all? Can pieces of mine change? So those kinds of me as part of the pieces went to maybe 1973, 74. But after a while, I thought that maybe I don't need to be part of the project. So this is 1976. Same gallery, Sonnabend Gallery. There was an interesting change in those few years. Seedbed was also done in Sonnabend Gallery, but the way the gallery was built at that time, there were these freestanding walls, so that you could go around the wall. You weren't necessarily in a room. But by 76, and this was 4 years after Soho Galleries opened, Soho Galleries started to realize that 4 years have gone by, we have to start to make money. Not exactly in those words, you know, but for example, the way the gallery was in 1976, there's a wall perpendicular to this wall. So when you get out of the gallery elevator, you're channeled. You know, you walk very, very directionally, and now you come here, and now there's a door in this wall. So everything is channeled to bring people, and to bring the representative of the gallery, once they recognized who a particular person is, says, let me tell you about this work. You know? So everything kind of changed. Yeah. And for me, I thought that was, I mean, I in the back of my mind started to think, I have to find some other place to make my places. But anyway, let me describe this. The outside of the room is painted black. The door is blocked off, also painted black. Next to the black room is a long table, long wooden plank, stools on either side of the table. The table has legs, so you don't see it from this view. Though you do see it. You do see it there. The wooden plank is set up on the windowsill of the gallery, and then the plank extends out the window. There's a hanging speaker. Speakers were larger then. A hanging speaker, a constant clock ticking, and as the clock was ticking, my voice comes in, saying things like, "Now that we're all here together, and what do you think, Barbara? Now that we've gone as far as we can go, and what do you think, Bob? Now that we're satisfied, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." So for me, that started that started doing what I don't know who was the first person who used the word installation, but I think it was maybe a necessary word, because but the way I saw the word installation, it was that you took this room and you installed something in the room. You know? That without what was being installed in the room possibly would have meant nothing.
Of a performative presence that made it an installation as opposed to just a sculpture.
But it wasn't. I think a performative presence has to be live, and has to be there. This is just almost kind of reportage, you know.
I mean, the last time you were in the gallery, your voice on speaker, but you were under the floor.
Yeah.
You could have been under the table or in another room and saying that live. As far as the people who came to the gallery, they
Yeah.
couldn't tell the difference between a recording of your voice and a live voice in a way. So you were there.
Yeah,
For all
yeah.
intents and purposes. I remember the piece. You had a sense that you were there. One had a sense that you were there.
Really?
Unless you knew.
I
didn't know.
I didn't. You know, I thought I've tried to get away from myself, and also I said, well, I could probably do more pieces by getting away from myself, but you know, those kinds of pieces went on from 1973.
Did it also mean a piece that you could sell, or that your dealer could sell, because now you had a set of objects and a recording, and the whole thing could be sold to a collector who had a second floor?
They possibly could be, but no dealer I've ever worked with ever sold an installation. But that's not. But you know, maybe 7 or 8 years later, they sold it. There was a project called maybe this is my favorite title, and the title is VD Lives, TV Must Die. So that was bought. It was bought by the Guggenheim, but I don't think they've ever put it up. I don't know. I mean, very, very, very few of these pieces. Though they all could be sold, but you know. Okay. Okay. Around the same time, and what I wanted these pieces to be were attempts to take the space as it was, and for example, if there are columns in the space, as there were at the kitchen in I think this was 1978, but I thought that I had to make use of these columns. So if there were five columns in the space, I would the whole thing is made of these kinds of black. They're not exactly rubber bands, but they could be tightened. They could be tightened. A bowling ball could be held in place. The bowling ball was aimed at a television set, so though no one did it. Yeah.
On the monitor? Was it just TV?
No. On one monitor is a kind of still picture of body upon body, and every once in a while, I think it was black and white. Every once in a while, it was shifted a little bit. As it was shifted, my voice comes in, saying things like "there," right there. No, you missed it. You missed it. There. Now, so it was describing.
Suggestive.
Yeah, probably a little more than suggestive. In the other monitor, it was. I don't have to. I didn't take text with me today, because I thought I was going to do this much faster. On the other monitor, because there were two, one at one end, one at the other end of the gallery. There were constant gunshots for maybe 20 seconds. The gunshots stop, and this kind of mixed voice, though it was me mixing my voice with my other voice or something. You know, it was a kind of multiple voice, and it was a. Now I don't remember the text, but it was at this time I based all my texts on the music of the time, so it was all based on the Ramones, the Sex Pistols. It was all based, because I thought that was going to be the end of music. It wasn't. Worse music came afterwards, but.
Do you see that this work is being in dialogue with punk culturally? Like, I never made that connection.
Well, probably because he didn't hear it.
Yeah.
But it was also, and I think almost all the projects, there was a piece called "Cry Baby!" exclamation point at the clock tower, at the three floors of the clock tower. Again, I probably should have thought of bringing the.
So was the early work then in dialogue with like Neil Young and Bob Dylan and people listening to that?
Bob Dylan, I never got.
But Neil Young, I heard.
Neil Young, I did, but Van Morrison or Leonard Cohen, I got much more. Yeah. I mean, there's an incredible Leonard Cohen song, apparently addressed to his brother who fucked his wife, and it's one of the most beautiful songs I ever heard. Yeah.
What's it called?
That famous blue raincoat. So his brother wore this, and there's a great line, but I don't know if I can remember it. And I have, I think, one word wrong, and I'm going to use the word sorrow, but he says to his brother, and thanks. I don't think it was sorrow though. And thanks for the sorrow you took from her eyes. I thought it was there for good, so I never tried. Is the most forlorn, the most amazing line I ever heard. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. Okay. By the beginning of the 80s, I wanted things that people could possibly use. I wanted visitors to the gallery to be part of the project. This is a 1980 piece called Instant House. Four American flags, like 5 feet by 8 feet. A swing in the middle. If a person sits on the swing starts to go down, and the walls start to go up. So the walls are an American house inside a Soviet house house outside. When you get up, it goes down. It goes down. So I started. You know, I mean, this happened at a very important time when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, I think in 1980. Yeah. So it was a fast. It was a piece that I wanted to tie into. Okay. So again, or not again, but gradually, I wanted persons to be inhabitants, to be inhabitants of what I had set up. This was a piece done on the MIT campus in 1984. It's a piece called Bad. I don't know. I hate to call these things pieces. I would love to say it's an almost house, or it's a proto house called Bad Dream House, and the title came from the fact that by this time I started to think I really have to start doing architecture or something like architecture, even though I really don't know how. So I thought.
What the impetus was for that kind of revelation?
Because I wanted these, if I called them pieces, I wanted the pieces to be used. So this house called Bad Dream House.
In a utilitarian way, or as, I mean, because people used your works of art before as works of art.
Yeah, but as works of art never counted for me.
Uh-huh.
I really can't stand art. And I realized that while I was doing art, that
So in the same way that
and I hate because the word art is a cheat. You know, almost every other thing, you know, something can be a house, something can be a garden, but art gives something value, and I really don't think I don't think you should beg for value. That
the word was extrinsic to its use or to its existence?
well, come on, if somebody says this is a work of art, they're praising something. It's as simple as that. So if you use the word art, you're praising the thing you do. And I thought, that's cheating. You know, that you have to earn this, you know. And that's really kind of important to me, you know. Okay, Bad Dream House. 2 upside down houses tilted against each other so that they support a 3rd upside down house on top. The houses on the ground. I mean, they couldn't be made of real bricks, but it was brick facing. The house in the air. Oh, not in the air. It's not a flying house. It's a kind of cradled house. The walls are all some kind of transparency. So you can walk through each end of the house. So that here there's an upside down table that you could sit at. You can go upstairs. You can go upstairs. Now you sit on the underside of the house on some kinds of boards, or you could go further upstairs to. So I wanted users.
What would you say that you wanted them to do? What was the function of this house? This Bad Dream House?
That's kind of up to them, I think. But I don't know if anybody would have gone that far. So I probably made a mistake, because all I did was give people another place to sit. And they have a lot of places to sit in parks, in the city. So I really didn't know how to go further than that. I hoped. I mean, at one point I thought, wouldn't it be incredible if somebody tore apart this bad dream house, so that it really became a bad dream house, and now turned it into something else. That it turned it into something that maybe I don't know, maybe invigorated the user. Maybe.
You weren't working out of an architectural tradition at this point, but you were creating what they would call a folly, right? What the architecture world would call a folly.
Yeah, as soon as somebody.
Which is a kind of pejorative, I've always thought, but maybe
Yeah.
it's not.
Well, it is. I mean, to me, folly meant,
Foolish.
it's useless. Yeah, it's useless. But maybe, but I mean, I can even make it worse by saying that all people can do here is kind of pretend, because it really doesn't have a use. You can look at yourself in the mirror, blah blah blah, that kind of stuff. But I don't know if I ever gave things a use that could have really taken the user to, I don't know, some more extended, higher plane.
But you feel this piece failed in some ways then? I mean, like many of the other things that moved you on in another direction, there was a sense of
Well,
failure?
I mean, this moved me on, but I thought, I mean, the most important thing I thought was all you could do here is sit down, and don't people sit down enough? I want people to rise up. I want people to jump out of where they're sitting and go and shake somebody or something. Well, I don't know if I want them to shake somebody, but at least get angry at somebody. Okay, around that time, this is 1984, 1985. Since I was making a house or something like a house, I thought I had to start thinking about places for not crowds of people or something like a mass of people, but a person may be used for one person. So there were a number of projects. They're not all here. All of them were, I think, from '84 to '85. This is a piece called Ladder Lounge Chair. It's made of aluminum ladders put together. So in this position, it can act as a ladder, but then you can unhinge it so that it becomes a lounge chair. Not the most comfortable lounge chair, but still a lounge chair. Or a 1985 piece called People's Wall, a wall 8 feet high, 16 feet long, 2 feet deep, and the inside has we use this kind of inside of a coat or jacket, so it was kind of puffy, so people could climb on stairs and take another position, etc. Same time, 1985, May's table. It's all made out of glass. There's a kind of continuous glass bench that takes you between among the tables. So it's a place where two people might be sitting. Somebody else wants very badly to sit next to one of the people at this table, so tries to shove the other person out. I don't know if that necessarily had happened. It was done in a gallery at the Hartford Museum, and it was I don't know if they still have it, but it was a place set aside for a gallery for the blind. So I thought, well, how do you do that? And I thought, well, if we make it out of transparent glass, nobody is seeing more than the blind are. No, that's not exactly true. Or a piece called "Seat Thrown into a Corner." It's a mirrored wedge, so you can now have a seat. Okay, around that time, then I wanted people to more and more use things. This is a piece called Room Dividers. It's a number of walls, corrugated walls, on top of other corrugated walls. I think if a person walks around it enough, you realize that you can start to move these walls. So you move these walls out of this kind of rectangle. So now you can go inside a space, or if you start to move other walls, now you always have some kind of enclosure, enclosures in the corners. This remains one of my favorite projects, actually. Okay, so around this time, the end of the 80s, I realized that I didn't want to do things in gallery spaces anymore. I wanted projects to be outside. They didn't necessarily have to be outside, but I want to go through a number of these. They were not necessarily built, though all of them were. We were asked to do a project.
So at this point, you became a we, and you started bringing
Yes.
designers and
Yeah.
people working
Yeah.
with you?
From 1988.
So you made a decision you were
Yeah.
part of a collaborative.
I mean, I say the we without even thinking about it
Before that
anymore.
point, it was still I functioning.
It was, yes.
So that was a pretty critical decision to begin to work collaboratively, even though, with the collaborative with your name on it.
Yeah,
and other
yeah,
people
yeah.
as co-equals in a way.
Yeah, I didn't want to separate myself from the others. Though at the same time, sometimes, I mean, the studio was always relatively small, 4 people, 5 people, sometimes other people, sometimes interns came in, but that sometimes kind of spoiled it, because the people who came in were probably too afraid to talk with people who were used to talking together, and some of these people stayed for a long time. Okay, so this was a site in Houston. There were these strange. They're not strange buildings, but the buildings, I realized, when people told me what they were, there was a mental hospital. They were all things for cripples, for people who weren't really allowed in the everyday world. I thought that was very strange. And when I asked why, they seemed to think, oh, there was no problem about that. But anyway, it led to me to I shouldn't have said me. It led to us thinking, can we start doing a kind of maze within a maze, so that everywhere you walk, there are these channels of water, so they don't really impede you, but you have to walk over the channels of water. This too was one of those pieces I thought were.
So at this point, you had left the gallery system, or were preparing to leave the gallery
Well,
system.
but I still hadn't.
But it wasn't serving you in the way you needed to be supported?
I have to almost say absolutely not. For some reason, my projects were there was some furniture.
Gladstone, you had two great dealers.
But I think Barbara was very, very disappointed in me because my stuff didn't sell. Though they sold, but at very, very low prices. A furniture piece at that time, 1984, 1985, probably cost $15,000 to $25,000. So it was very different than pricey. And I don't know. I sometimes wondered, did I try to make things unsaleable? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't wonder. I think you work your way out of that system the way you work your way out of the room with a typewriter in it. You just wanted out, and you found your way out.
Yeah. I mean, but also at that time, and I know Barbara really, really objected to this because I wanted every project to be attributed to Acconci Studio, and she tried as hard as she could to sneak Vito Acconci back in. But I thought it shouldn't be. I thought these projects should come from conversation with people in the studio, from argument.
From a collective.
Yeah, and from people disagreeing, and I thought this was some of these pieces I think were the best projects we ever did, because it really came from a we. It came. Yes, maybe somebody would have some idea, then somebody else would come in and say, wait a minute, did we think about this? And we always had this tendency of, if we had a little more time left, we could try to use it to make it a better project. And I still have that. Yeah.
Just a bit more about your ambivalence about the gallery system, the market, and selling. I know it's something that a lot of our students feel.
Yeah.
And worry about. And I'm just wondering if you could share your own, sort of expand on
Yeah.
the fact that
Yeah. Well, I think I can start by, there have been pieces, mostly furniture pieces, because I don't think anybody can buy, room dividers could have been bought, but it wasn't. I realized very quickly that when a collector bought, I would say a project of mine, they would probably say a piece, they never let people use it. And I thought, I don't want this. I want these things, you know. Also, I made a mistake. I should have made them editions of 3, editions of 5, but they still would have been, you know, five collectors not letting people use it. I mean, I remember this show in somewhere in the West now. I can't remember. An interesting museum, but they borrowed May's table from the person who bought it, and this person who bought it demanded that people put these kinds of sock shoes over their shoes so that they wouldn't scratch it, you know. And I thought, I'm in the wrong place.
So the commodification leads to preciousness, and then that means that
Yeah.
people don't want the work to be fucked up, and that they want to
Yeah.
keep it at
Wait.
the value that they bought it.
Which
or
is understandable, you know. I mean,
If you go to the Carl Andre show, you can see that the only piece you can stand on is the one that Carl lent to the show, because all the other owners wouldn't let anybody walk on the pieces, even though they were made to be walked on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a primary issue of his work was
Yeah.
having them on the floor to be not special,
Yeah.
and now they are like, you know, guards standing, can't
Yeah.
walk on it. And so it's the museumification based on value,
Yeah.
right? Because now these works, you know, your old works as well have increased value, and people are invested in that value. And I think that's part of what Mark is talking about now, is that there's a lot of concern about artists, young artists, buying into that system where that's necessarily going to happen. Or if you're a Kunzian,
Yeah.
trying to make it happen even faster, you know, I guess. But it is an issue.
I mean, if the Guggenheim is interested in some of your work, once they buy it, I'm assuming that they can create the rules around how people interact with it, right?
Wait a minute, why do you say that? Because Matea, if you as the artist say, if you want to buy this work, here's how it has to be used. You don't say, if you buy this work, now you control it. You can say as the artist, here's the work and here's how it has to be used if you want to buy it. If you don't want to buy it, don't buy it. But if you want to buy it, it has to be used. And you know, I think that understanding didn't exist then.
Well,
You didn't
yeah,
go through
I
that
don't.
contract.
I don't think I even. It's not that I didn't think about it, but the way I thought about it was, you know, well, for example, probably MoMA has not a lot of pieces, but 3 or 4 pieces that you can use, like a piece called Peeling House, and people pull, but they don't let people use them, and I can't do that after the fact.
The conservators rule in
Well,
museums unless
yeah.
you make it explicit. And even then, they'll say, okay, that's how it gets used, so we're not going to show
Yeah.
it. We'll just keep it in storage then forever.
But
Been tribal art or Native American ritual art.
Take it
Yeah.
out, ritual use.
Used and now are like ensconced.
I mean, interestingly though, I asked the conservator that, you know, you have this piece, Peeling House, but you know, the only time I've seen it displayed, it can't be used. So what they do is every once in a while, because it has this kind of wall upon wall, so you can pull a wall. So every once in a while, the people who take care of the museum lift it so people can see it, but they can't really do it.
So the
But
problem
I
is
should have done that.
but the problem is
should have done that.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me, and you know, I don't know.
Who could have ever imagined also a world in which, you know, the Metropolitan would get 6 million visitors a year, mostly tourists who don't,
Yeah.
you know, are just there for a kind of a general experience, and things can get ruined. And so, you know, and so you know, if you're from the museum side, you say, like, we want to have this here for 5 generations to come, 10 generations to be able to see this work. How do we preserve it and look and feel Well, we don't know because the artist didn't tell us, so we'll just be conservative and
Yeah,
say
but
no
I
one touches.
but I realized that I should have told them.
Yeah.
They might not
Well, you might have
they
made a
might
difference.
not have bought it.
Yeah.
But,
Or maybe knowing what you know now, you might have made it with different materials or.
But it would have been hard because this was a piece called Peeling House.
Right.
And the only way I thought it could peel was it was done with different kinds of fabric.
Right.
You know, so the outer shell was camouflage material, and I said, but look, you know, if the camouflage material wears out, you can just buy another one. And she said, and this person who I think was really sincere about this said, well, you know, every few years there's a different kind of camouflage. Now we can only buy the camouflage that you used at the beginning.
Unless you make it clear.
Yes.
For instance, if you make a video piece today with a flat screen and you sell it, and you say to the museum, look, I want this shown on a flat screen, but if in 50 years they don't have flat screens, they have something else, then show it in some other way. Or you can say you always have to keep a flat screen available and working if you want to show this work. Those would be different instructions. to
There's a video installation or two that the Guggenheim has one, but they can't really use it because those televisions are hard to get now. You know, and it is very difficult.
So you leave that system
never
of
thought of it.
museumification
Yeah.
to another system of
Yeah.
public architecture where its long-term existence is then the job of a community to maintain a park, or maintain a maze, but at least they know what they have to do, right?
Yeah.
And you're more comfortable with that?
I don't know. I'm not
Giving
so
up
sure.
control on a certain level?
No, I don't mind the giving up control.
What part are you
But
uncomfortable
what I wonder about is that would a person who's taking care of this say that only 3 to 5 people can go inside at the same time, you know, and you know you could only stay for 8 minutes, you know.
Well, and you can only be so specific in the contract you make, right?
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
for instance, you can't contract around what's called an attractive
An attractive nuisance, which was
Right. Does everybody
one of my
remember that?
favorite,
It's
one
a
of my
great-
favorite.
It's a great concept, the attractive nuisance. If you make a sculpture that attracts someone to do something where they could hurt themselves, like a ramp where a skateboard kid could go up and then they just fall off and get hurt. You'd be responsible for that, or the city would be responsible for creating something that would tempt someone to hurt themselves. It would attract them, but then someone could either get hurt or hurt someone else. So the city wouldn't do it. They wouldn't build that because their lawyers would say,
Yeah.
we can't do it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
now
yeah.
you're involved in a very different set of relationships when it's a Acconci studio because you're dealing with the laws of public spaces in different countries, in different cities.
Yeah.
And you have to accommodate your aesthetic vision to that level of reality. But if you want it to be used, as you're saying, then that's the compromise you have to make, right? That you have to compromise with.
I don't know.
with
I
law.
wonder if the only way to make it really usable is that. I mean, I could never. I don't think I could ever do this. But if you make 5 or 7 of them, and put them in different places, but they would still be cared for.
Each one.
The way,
differently.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, I know you wanted to go flip through some more, we only have about 10 more minutes. So,
Okay.
but I think this conversation's been very useful.
Should I keep going or should I try to skip to the end?
Why don't you skip towards the end then?
Yeah? Okay. It's gonna take, okay. You'll see things as you go by. I don't want to be in front of it. But this was these were things when I started to think that architecture starts with clothing, you know. So clothing became pretty important. But again, all these are you know, our furniture storefront for art and architecture. You probably know. A project done in Vienna. The middle of the space is just like one and a half floors. Around it is five stores. This is I think one of, I don't know. This is a project. This is a project I love. We made a replica of the inside of the museum, and hung the replicated museum from one corner of the actual museum. So now when you go inside, you're within museum and museum. You can go out a door that gets you to a passageway. You walk around. Now you walk on top of this grass floor.
Real grass.
Yeah. So this is the actual museum. That's the real canopy. This is a fake canopy. A tree comes from goes through the floors. Okay, but always this kind of, you know, this. But again, if I can't stop on all of these. But there were these two Greek brothers who wanted us to build a house for them. So because we were building a house for two brothers, we made these intersecting spirals, so that the roof of one brother's house is the balcony of the other brother's house, and vice versa. But they decided not to do it. The notion of street furniture is kind of important. These are all like mid 2000s. There was a competition for a new lamppost, and the guide said that this should be very, very thick, because it should be able to hold different kinds of different kinds of lighting, etc. I mean, we have a habit of trying to negate those things. So we thought, why don't we make the thinnest possible post? So the thinnest possible posts then can start to weave around each other. This is one of my favorite pieces. Yeah, it will probably never be built, but we did a subway station in Coney Island. This was the old station. This is our station. We wanted to make views by bulging the walls until the wall starts to break. So it comes out and then winds to go. Or it comes in, winds to go out. Sometimes the bulgers are used for seats. A project we did in Graz. Why does it? I don't know. Well, I don't know. Should I? Yeah. we we started with we started with opposites. We wanted to make a bowl, but then we would turn the bowl over, and the bowl then became a dome. The place, the going from one to the other becomes a children's playground. It's lit at night. This is the theater. We knew we had to make seating. We tried to make seating. In waves, because this would be a way where people don't have to sit facing straight ahead. One person can sit opposite another person. This is the going from bowl to dome. People entering the dome. There's a kind of cover over it's seating is all around it. These are movable seats, stackable seats. We knew we had to make a bar, so we did a very specific kind of bar. It was made of three strips of rubber, and the reason we did one strip on top of another, because we thought this is a bar. At least now and then somebody's going to get drunk. So wherever they put out their drink, they would probably hit. This is a skateboard park. Never got built, though. They kept saying they were going to. There were 3 high points on the site. This is a restaurant. The restaurant is below. So now we make these skating ramps. We wanted pedestrians and skaters to mix. I don't know if they would ever do that, but here's a skater who's jumped much higher than any possible in the world can. The second high point is a cone-shaped hill. It's a person-made hill, so that there's a structure that's making this thing into a hill. So these skating ramps go from one thing to another. Here they go to the hill, and as they go to the hill, they go inside the hill. So now you can have cuts that bring in light. You can have different kinds of skating ramp. Another high point is a place where people. It's a different kind of skating. It's not a skating made of arcs, but skating where you're jumping from step to step. The last high point makes these quarter pipes and half pipes. This will be probably the only time we'll ever get an ocean to work with, but you know. Okay, let me just go quickly. Well, yeah, we, like others, did a kind of proposition for a new world trade center. We made a new world trade center full of holes. So we started, we started on the ground, raised it to a height of 110 stories high, more space than anybody could possibly need. So we shoot cones through it. So now we have this this building riddled with holes. It has a kind of other purpose. Once there are these holes, the rest of the city can come inside this building. Waterfalls can come inside the building. Elevators can come inside the building. Climbing plants are throughout the building. I mean, we don't build a lot of projects. We propose an awful lot of projects. Yeah.
I was there, I saw that.
Oh yeah?
Yeah,
Was it working?
it worked, it made it work.
Because somebody told me it wasn't working
No,
recently.
because they have some engineers on that, yeah.
So it's a building run by people who kind of fixed the city, which I think was probably the only reason they did this. There's a tower, a tower in a corner. The tower is very constantly moving, so that it does provide a large storage of wind. So down in the ground, there's a circular ring cut out of the ground, moved by what the wind wheel produces. The ring is very slowly traveling. So you can blow your nose, and now you thought you were talking to somebody, but that somebody is around the corner. In Munich, in the city. Oops. This was most of these projects we're kind of sure are getting built, but they don't. But this was a project for it's the largest fishing port, but the fishing port is to catch fish. The largest fishing port in France. So we wanted to make this bridge that people could cross, but every once in a while, ships have to come in to be cleaned. So we made this kind of bridge that coils around itself. Again, one of my favorite pieces. Yeah. It has another part where we took water in under the ground. These things don't exist at the same time. So at low tide, the water pulls this down. At mid tide, it's even with the grass. At high tide, it goes above the grass. I should really go faster. The notion of vehicles is kind of important for us, even though I was born in the Bronx, never drove a car in my life. But I do love the idea of cars. Or, you know, you can have a kind of bulging car. You can tie cars together. Now this was a very early piece, 1992, a piece called Personal Island. A rowboat dug into the ground. There's some soil and grass. You can sit and look out, or you can walk onto this almost island, and now you have your own island that you can.
Peter, maybe we should stop.
Okay. Can I just go to one quick? Yeah, but let me just go to. This is a project that is nearly finished now in. Sorry. Okay, almost. This is a project, a recent project in Toronto. This is a project in Indianapolis. As you walk through this tunnel, as you go through the tunnel, you turn on sensors that make these lights go on. But then if another person is coming towards you, those lights might go off to that other person. I don't know. I think this is maybe the first project we've done that maybe.
Is that actually done, or being done?
Yeah, it's almost totally done. Yeah. Okay, that gives you an idea. Yeah. Thank you.
You'd like to stay with us this afternoon for the